Hello, everybody. Hi, welcome to Verto's July webinar. We're delighted to see you here. This session is called A Practical Guide to Making the Right PPM Platform Decision. And we hope that this webinar will be a significant help in your process of doing just that. My name is Laura Watts. I am Verto's Marketing Manager. I've worked alongside my public sector focused teammates here at Verto for the past 6 years. And in that time, I've been able to get a sense firsthand of the complexity and best practice, appropriate ways of buying a platform such as Verto. And it's difficult. It's a minefield. There are a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of stakeholders that need to be involved. There's the absolute need for champions and alignment. And that's not always an easy thing for people to navigate when teams are really large and day jobs can't be put on hold. Now, before I continue with the subject, I just want to remind you all that this session is being recorded, and that is so that we can send out the recording on email after the session. We're also going to host it on our YouTube channel and on our website, so you can catch it there shortly after we finish, so that you can share it with others who might not have been able to make it along today. So today's webinar follows our very recently launched Buyer's Guide. Craig, if you can flip to the next slide, that'll be great. We have distilled hundreds of public sector procurements into this guide, into this very practical playbook. And today's webinar is designed to bring that to life. So each part of the discussion maps to a chapter or a part of the guide, so that you'll know exactly where to go for more detail. Once you get the guide straight to your inbox, you'll feel a lot more familiar using it. So as a bit of an introduction, and I'll use the slides as a bit of an agenda as well, before handing over to my co-hosts. The guide has been designed to help public sector buyers make informed decisions. To start, we always suggest that you take time to understand, what do you need to know about your own organisation? So we're going to start with that conversation today. The guide also suggests the challenges that you might be facing and includes a structured checklist for evaluating solutions against the criteria that matters most to you. So we'll be talking about how it's best to evaluate those options based on your organisation's specific requirements. Also, it includes questions that you all should be asking potential suppliers, including the questions that will reveal the difference between a genuine PPM platform and perhaps a project management tool that's dressed up with a portfolio label. So we're going to arm you with the right ways to identify the best PPM tool for your organisation. So with that, I would like now to pass over to Craig and Pete to deliver today's session. So I'll just bring you guys on. Thanks very much.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Laura. So I think from the first step of this journey, it's all about understanding the internal requirements and having a clear understanding of a checklist that you should be looking at when addressing a point. So as you can see here, the primary focus is around starting with outcomes and not the features, and then moving beyond today's requirements. Pete, thoughts?
Yeah, thanks, Craig. So good morning, everybody. For those of you that don't know me, I'm one of the account directors here at Verto. Talk a lot with our central government clients and the wider public sector base, supporting a lot of conversations across the whole public sector. What we always talk about is look at the outcomes. It's easy to compare feature lists. You can look at a supplier catalogue, you can look at features and benefits, but what does that mean to you? What problem is it solving to you? And that problem is often the outcome you're looking to achieve. Start with there and then work backwards to your platform. If you think about the outcomes, you're not going to focus on the functionality. You're not going to focus on, to Laura's point in the intro, what is dressed up functionality as opposed to what is helping to achieve your outcomes. Once you've defined them, it becomes much easier to assess which platform is the right fit. A platform should ultimately support your strategy. It shouldn't lead it. It shouldn't define it. You should not have to change fundamental processes in order to have a platform fit your system. There's also we've got to look about the scalability and the interoperability, and Craig and I are going to talk about that more during today's session. But actually, when you're looking at your plan, what is your organization looking to achieve? What is its 10-year strategy? If we look at the NHS 10-year strategy, that is a long period of time. AI revolution, constantly evolving SaaS models, constantly evolving IT systems. What is likely to grow with your organization? How can that adapt as you're looking not just at digital transformation, but also maturity as well? For those of you that are familiar with the GovS002 framework, the Government Functional Standard for Project Delivery, there's a piece in there around capability, and many organisations get themselves assessed, and there's various different levels, developing, good, better, best. If you're a developing or a good, you might have a 12-24 month strategy to get to better or good or better. You might have a 5-year strategy to get from developing to best, or to, from good to better, or whatever that might be. And you need to make sure that a platform can support that maturity process, and also the maturity of not just the individual directorates, but actually across organization model as well. And for that to happen, the platform needs to be configurable and amend to meet those changes and other pieces that will come out of the woodwork. Prime point over the last sort of 6 to 8 months is the program and project data standards. Many businesses are going through massive amounts of business change at the moment to comply with those. And how adaptable are those existing systems to comply with that? I'm sort of spoiling the rest of the webinar here, but there's various things we've got to think about at this moment in time as you look to invest in a strategic portfolio management system that's going to support your long-term strategic goals.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said, Pete. I think from my side of things as well, it's about not being super short-sighted. We know there's immediate pain, there's an immediate challenge, but it's looking beyond that and planning for the future. So I think for me, that was a key point. Thinking beyond today, I think sums it up quite nicely. You may address a problem now, but how does that look in 6, 9, 12, 18 months time? And so, yeah, that for me really, really resonated. So, as Pete alluded to, the next element is around data migration and integration. So it's not just looking at what the tool can do for you and the strategic thinking. It's about how do we transition to that tool? How do we get our existing data set across? We have lots of information in disparate systems and disparate tools, and how do we move across to a new system, and how can we also connect our bread and butter systems, if you will, our mandatory systems that are not going to move into this PPM ecosystem? So what you can see here are 3 elements that we look at from a migration and an integration perspective. And the first one is, what risks can we remove from a migration piece? The first one is around the loss of data, right? The biggest risk with moving from one platform to another is data loss. It's around losing information in that carryover process that can actually be quite a hindrance when it comes down to business continuity. On top of that, from a migration piece, teams often spend lots and lots of time rebuilding and recreating data. And that can be a really big time sink. And that dovetails nicely into the effort that the teams face. Oftentimes when you transition into a new tool, there's heavy manual processes. So when you're looking for a partner to work with you on this, and I say partner and not a systems vendor purposefully, it's about having someone that's going to support you on that journey, give you the expert advice in the field in terms of how do they de-risk these things, how do they give you assurance that your data won't be lost, that there'll be minimal manual intervention, if any, and how to make the process as seamless and as clean as possible for you. Because in the implementation cycle, this can become a fairly big pressure point, if you will, right? That they understand where the system is, what it needs to be, that the system's been configured, but there's this anxious period of time when it's like, I want to see my system, I want to see my data brought to life in a new tool. And so having a partner that can de-risk that and to give you the assurance is really important. We then look at that target state and having a partner that can help you with clarity around a migration plan. What approach are they going to take? How can they give you that assurance ahead of any decision point being made? Have they got a plan? Have they done this before? What systems do they transition from? What's the formats in which the data needs to come in? What's needed from me as a buyer, right? Because there is a team approach from the partner and from the organizations proceeding with the system in terms of understanding what's needed on both sides. How can AI leverage and accelerate this process? AI is really good at a lot of things, and one thing it is actually doing is interpretation and understanding of words and structures. So one key example we give is when migrating risk data, lots of times there's disparate, unstructured ways in which risk registers have been produced. Some people might call a risk categorized as a financial risk, or it could be commercial or economical. AI is really good at pulling through all of those weeds and being able to say, you're saying the same things here. This is the funnel we're going to bracket that into. And therefore, in that future state, everything's going to be known as a financial risk, and it can really, really speed things up. On top of that as well, it can drastically reduce manual errors that happen when you're getting your hands dirty doing it manually. And then the other side of things as well is making sure that the partners that you work with address that risk of data loss, and that it's baked into the plan, so that there's dress rehearsals in place, that there's testing being done before the cutoff point, and that we have a time to roll back. And sometimes even more importantly, it's the securing of that data before a cutoff point. I mean, we see it with MS Project Online. You've got T-8 weeks and a bit of change until that system is offline and your data is gone. And so a big part of the migration of that is around taking that data and safely securing it in advance of that cutoff, and validating that no matter what happens to that system, we have it out of the tool, locked up, secure, and so therefore we're never going to lose that information. And then you can look at the next step, which is how we seamlessly get it into the system. And beyond that, we need to think a little bit about the flow state that we'd like to get into once this has taken place. So not only does the migration piece cover that business continuity, but you need to look at sustainability and moving beyond, and that's where integrations and interconnectivity comes in. So it's about understanding from a partner perspective their approach to integration. What methods do they use from an integration perspective? What experience have they got? We often work with organizations who come to the table and simply have an understanding of the systems that they use that's non-negotiable, that can't be removed, right? Finance systems, ERPs, could even be a corporate risk system, for example. And so our job is to work alongside them to understand what that future state looks like, what that journey is going to be like, and to make sure that it's sustainable and scalable as we move into the future. Also ensuring that all of those systems are connected in the right way at the right level, so that people know where they're going, and ensuring that at some point you have a single source of truth, which typically becomes that PPM platform at the end. So there's lots of things here. You could probably do a webinar in its entirety on migration, integration, and connectivity, but it's a really important part of transitioning and selecting a new tool. Because ultimately, once you've made that leap, no matter how good the system is, if the data hasn't come with you, if it's still clunky, if it's not connecting in the right places, then you're just going to be hampered. And so these are some really important things to consider. And funny enough, as we segue across, some key things that you should probably be looking for from a vendor is, did it have a migration plan? Have they done this before? What checks do they do from a quality perspective? What do they expect from you? How do they assure that everything is going to dovetail nicely and is going to transition over into the new environment seamlessly? And then the final point that I'll introduce Pete in, because Pete's done a lot of this work and partnerships as well, is you don't have to do this alone, and that extends beyond just a PPM provider. But Pete, I thought I'd bring you in to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, thanks, Craig. What we're alluding to here is utilizing systems integrators. So a lot of central government infrastructure is actually built by systems integrators in the outset, or it's been developed and amended and adopted as time has gone by. And actually, nobody knows that setup better than the systems integrator, or nobody reads that data better than systems integrators. So when we're looking at migrating data across from the start, they can assist with that. But actually, where they really come into their own is when you've got a plethora of enterprise systems, whether it be your ERP, your financials, whatever that system may be, HR. You need lots of pillars of your organization talking to each other and flowing that data through. Utilizing the trust and integrity of a systems integrator will only support that, and that will ensure that your enterprise PPM platform, when it's onboarded, is ready to go from day one with trusted integral data, and the whole reason organizations move through this is for that better visibility, real-time access to data. They want to drive better decisions making and they want to do it faster. You can only do that if you actually trust the data that's in front of you. So utilize your partners where possible or where you want to. Obviously, there are PPM providers out there, such as ourselves, that can support and maintain and do that for you as well. It's not an and or, sorry, it's not a either or, it's an and or. We can do it for you. We can support SIs. We can be led by the SI. We can lead the SI. It entirely depends on your infrastructure, how you've gone to market, and ultimately, back to my very first point, what's the actual outcome you're looking to achieve? Let's understand that, and then everything else pieces together behind it.
Yeah, I think that last point that you mentioned is probably the most important. There might be some people thinking, we've never worked with a systems integrator. What is a systems integrator? But there's other people that might be sitting there going, we've worked with them for 10 plus years. We don't even know how our tech stack is arranged in the level of detail that they do. And so I think it's reassuring to know that if you need a PPM provider that can do it all, you've got that. But also, if you need someone to work hand in glove with these existing partners that you've worked with for so long, and there's been a lot of investment, time and effort, and collaboratively from that side of things, that we can slot in quite nicely there. So I think that is a really important element. So as we move on to the next piece as well, it's super important to understand about how the onboarding and ongoing support plays out. And you'll notice as well, we've mentioned partners quite a few times, and we'd like to think of ourselves as a partner. And I think when you're going for an enterprise PPM solution, you should be looking for a partner and less of a system provider. This is a lot bigger than just handing over the keys to a tool and using it, if you will. It's about working collaboratively to define a system that aligns to your processes, your journey, and the blood, sweat, and tears that you've probably put into developing the journeys, the PPM processes, the life cycles. And so by default, there are some key considerations that you should look at. And the first one is around their approach to discovery and design. And we're not talking technical design, coding design. We're talking the platform structure and how the platform will work for you. So actually taking the time to do detailed, well thought out discovery to understand where you're currently at, but more importantly, where you want to be, to help tease out some things that you're probably naturally not going to bring to the surface independently. And that's just because you don't do this every day, right? You're undertaking a massive change, whereas the PPM providers and partners out there, they do this day in and day out. And so the partner, in theory, should be able to come to the table with a lot of expertise and a lot of support to help you and to really uncover what you need, and to not move forward until that discovery piece has been completed and satisfied at both ends. There's nothing more important than doing effective discovery. If you skip that part, it's like I can't remember the exact saying, so I won't embarrass myself, but if you don't effectively plan, your delivery is just never going to be what it should be. And so that discovery piece is really about understanding what exactly it is that you need, making sure we're both on the same page as a team, so that when we move forward, we're moving forward in the right direction and there's a clear understanding as to where we're at. The other point is around making sure the system can do what it needs you to do. And I think Pete alluded to it earlier in terms of you shouldn't have to bend to suit a system. The system should be able to bend and flex to support you. And that's a really big part of an effective solution. It's around giving you the tools and enabling you, and you shouldn't be having to cut corners, make changes, and to pull your requirements back. The system should be adaptable and be able to evolve. And then as we move through, it's making sure that testing and refinement has been established, making sure that you're ready from an adoption perspective. Before we even get to all of that, though, I think it's important to understand what it is you actually need, but to make sure you're getting that buy-in from all levels. We're not just talking around a senior decision. We're talking around end users, champions of the tool. User adoption and change management that you can probably see on the right-hand side is absolutely critical, more critical than any configuration of any build, more critical than anything around the testing and refinement. Getting people bought in and on that journey is the single most important thing that you can do to ensure the system's successful. Doesn't matter how good the system is, if the people are not along with you for the ride, it's never going to work. And so having a partner in play that knows that they're efficient and and qualified and well versed in change management and the culture piece to help you go on that journey of change is really, really important. But also making sure you've got that buy-in from the top down. So to make sure that the people that are making these decisions are actually along for the journey. It's all too common that we see decisions be made and then you don't see anything else from the people that made those decisions until something's broken, something's missing, and they need something again. Having everyone involved and oftentimes the leaders leading the charge, if you will, is really critical. And so having that journey set out, having a partner that has a really thought out journey, not just from kickoff, but through implementation, into going live with a minimum viable product and MVP, and then into the ongoing support is really critical. So from an ongoing support perspective, and I'll double act this a little bit with Pete, there are different approaches that you might see being taken, and there's a different level of requirement that you might be expecting. We speak to some clients who want to manage things like ongoing admin in-house, right? It needs to be really cost effective. They know they've got the resource and they just want to be able to be given the keys to maintain a system. So the system and the partners should absolutely be able to support that. But a lot of times we speak to organizations that say, Craig, part of this is that we do not have the boots on the ground. This PPM tool needs to be another body, if you will, in the team to help me with everything that we're doing, and we don't have the tools to be able to admin and maintain this internally. And that's where partners might have offerings like what we do is it's known as our Verto Admin as a Service, or known as VAS for short, and it's about taking that onto our side of the fence, de-risking that side of things, giving you the assurance that you've got the best people on the job to maintain and support this system. And so you don't have to worry, how do I change this? How do I do that? Even though it's really easy to use, even from a config perspective, just being able to wash your hands with that and go, do this for me, help me out. We literally do not have the boots on the ground to do that is really important. Another thing as well from an ongoing perspective is around that community of users from a tool. And we'll start with internally, but then it will ripple out across the user base. We often see organizations setting up change champions and a network of champions across departments using the tool. Being able to spread that expertise, that knowledge and that passion and that support from the tool to make sure that no matter where you are in an organization, you've got a well-grounded community in your teams that can work together, that can help each other, and therefore promote best practice of the tool and get the most out of the tool that you're bringing in. But that really does ripple out and almost connect slightly to the networking sessions when we're talking about a community across a client base, if you will. So we've got over 100 public sector clients, and we hold biannually, probably more, probably less, it can change, but we hold regular in-person sessions where we bring the Verto P3M community in a room, and a lot of the time the tool is the last thing that's being spoken about, and it's almost always being spoken about how are you managing change, how are you being more efficient with reporting, what are you doing here, and the tool is often the last thing mentioned, if at all being mentioned. So there's lots of things that should be considered from an ongoing perspective, and having a partner that has that foundation set up that you can slot into really does help. The amount of times we get new clients coming on board and it's going great, but then they jump into one of these sessions and it really just flicks a light bulb in them when they're like, I didn't realize you had such a community, and I've made a connection with someone else across the country that's using this tool in a very similar way to me, and I can reach out to them now and I'm forming bonds and relationships beyond the tool. It really does become invaluable from an ongoing perspective. I did say a double act, so I will definitely bring Pete in to add any meat to these bones, but this is important that we take the time on it. You'll notice that I jumped a little bit around change management because I know Pete's been very close to that. But Pete, from a change management perspective, and maybe even anything to add on networking and the on-site stuff that you've spent a lot of time in, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I just want to add in on the user community that you were talking about, Craig, and absolutely it's there to help others learn best practice. We have key themes every quarter, or Verto Spotlight sessions, which are hosted on the last Friday of every month, where our community comes together. And to Craig's point, Verto is one of the last things we talk about. It's all about growing that community, knowing that there's people out there to support. But actually, by helping you, it helps us, because what we're doing in those sessions is we're listening and learning to market trends. We're understanding what's going on the ground within the public sector, so that when we spot trends, we do trend analysis, we understand the talk tracks, and that actually helps us continually improve not only our partnership with our users, but actually the development of the platform itself as well. We spoke way back at the start of the webinar about the scalability of a platform. How is this platform scalable? We're developing our platform because of you, because of our community of users that constantly give us the insight and feedback. But actually looping it back around to change management, what's really interesting is this whole slide could have been change management, and actually our head of client success, Tasha Osborne, and head of client delivery, Claire O'Dwyer, did a webinar with Laura last month focused purely on change management. So I'm not going to try and be an imposter on the great work they delivered. But actually, what the change management is, it also brings about accountability. Craig was talking about a senior sponsor, an executive sponsor within a project. Ultimately, when you're onboarding and working through a project, you need to understand, actually, there's a lot of key decision points here. We can go left down that railway line, or we can go right down that railway line. Which way are we going to take? We need that person, or sometimes that committee within an organization that is ultimately accountable for, this is the decision we're taking and this is the reason why. That helps the success of a PPM platform be aligned to the overall organizational objectives, and the change management around that drives consistency. It enables a consistent approach. It enables learning of all, going back to the maturity assessment we spoke about earlier, about the developing good, better, best part of GovEst 002. It allows everybody to be aligned on the same path, so that actually your PPM platform isn't just a tool, it becomes an enabler of change and an enabler of maturity through the processes that the change management community and the change management learnings have put in place. And that is constantly evolving through the training, the adoption, the iterations, new departments coming on board as part of the business changes, part of the change management, a phased rollout approach of a tool will bring out other business needs that were not thought of way back when you gathered your first requirements. Requirements will change, strategy will change, without a case in point, without going political, we've got a new prime minister that will have a different agenda to the previous one. That may change the strategy of certain organizations across government and the wider public sector. And change management is everything. It's how you drive success of a platform that's going to sit at enterprise level across an organization. And obviously change happens both sides of the fence. We can support change management, we can provide the online guides and help, but they're our online guides and help that are designed to our system, how we deliver it almost out of the box as part of everything that's going on. I'm flicking to the left hand side of the screen here, the discovery and design, the configuration and build. A PPM platform will look very different by the time it's deployed. So we need support from change management across our partnership, across our client base as well, to be able to support the adoption of the tool in the nuanced way that organization works, the terminology, the methodology, even the branding of materials. If it feels like it's coming from your organization and not from your partner or supplier, that will only increase adoption. It's not imposter, it's not Big Brother, it's here's our organization's training material and here's how you use it for our personal PPM system. So I'm going on a tangent here, but change management is all encompassing and everything, to be honest.
No, absolutely. And smoothly managed, as my scroll wheel got a bit trigger happy and changed the slides on you. So I didn't even see a hiccup, so well played there. It's interesting though, because you can see here we're halfway through, and this webinar is about before you buy, and hopefully this shows you that this is more about, does it tick X, Y, and Z features, right? That there's a much bigger thought process that needs to take place in terms of how it's going to support you, not just from a system level, but from partnerships, onboarding, support, configurability, flexibility, and one of the most important things for me is experience, right? That track record in your sector. We've paved the way, we've worked with similar organizations, and therefore we are best suited to be able to take you through on that journey. So assuming my scroll wheel plays ball with me as we move to the next slide, The next topic here is about considering the buying process and the options that you've got and the routes that you can take through that. So Pete, as I bring up the next slide, not sure if you'd like to talk about this one.
Yeah, thanks, Craig. And again, this could be a whole webinar subject by itself.
Yeah.
There's a lot to talk about. I'm going to try and keep it within a couple of minutes here. What we're going to look at today is basically three main routes: direct contract, frameworks, and open tenders. Direct contracts still occur. Okay, there's certain spending thresholds that is unique to an organization that they can decide whether they need the security and the compliance of a framework or open tender, or whether actually they can build the business case to understand that the direct route is the fastest. And that might be a compelling event that doesn't allow time for a full-blown ITT on an open tender. It may be that very simply the framework doesn't suit the requirements and the budget lineup. Whatever it may be, there is still ways to direct awards or direct contract with a reviewer T's and C's and SLAs and everything else with a vendor that allows you to have a rapid deployment and ultimately onboard a PPM tool in the quickest time frame possible. That doesn't always work. There's often times where procurement, the individual organization's procurement legislation or outlined by the Procurement Act that we have to steer it down a framework route. And there's many frameworks out there. Most of them are owned by the Government Commercial Agency, what was formerly the Crown Commercial Service, or CCS. And they tend to be the most popular across the UK public sector because naturally it is a UK government commercial frame, or they are UK government commercial frameworks. The two that we tend to come across the most in the public sector are actually the two easiest to navigate. You've got the digital marketplace known as G-Cloud, and you've also got the very long-handed Technology Products and Services 2, which often gets abbreviated to TPAS 2. And they can provide compliant procurement routes to market, but still give you that speed and that agility. So although I said right at the start of this webinar, don't focus on features and benefits, focus on outcomes. G-Cloud is a bit more of a shopping list. You can focus on features and benefits, and you do a G-Cloud search and it will come back with a list of vendors. And then you can long list, short list, and ultimately get through to your preferred supplier. There are often times when you can go straight to shortlist if your search terms only bring up a select number of suppliers, and that equally applies to direct award as well. So, we've had instances in the past where suppliers have come to, not suppliers, buyers have come to us and said, "Hey, we've done a shortlist on G-Cloud. You're the only organization that's come up. Can we just sense check our requirements you can meet?" They send us their requirements, we respond, and we direct award off the back of that. So although it is a bit more of a shopping list type procurement, it is compliant, it is quick, and it is still one of the best ways to procure SaaS software, and in this particular case, P3M platforms. However, what is becoming more common is the use of TPAS. And the reason being, it is still a pre-approved compliant procurement route, but actually it allows people to dive into more detail when they're doing their procurement. And there's ITT, there's mini competition, and there's direct award on TPAS. But what TPAS allows you to do, when you're building your business case, and many government organizations and wider public sector are starting to lean more and more on the Green Book, which is owned by the HM Treasury, and it talks about the 5 case business model. The Green Book is part of what are, I think they're nicknamed rather than actually named, the rainbow books across government, right? They're the guidance, they're the enablers. They tell you why you're doing it, what's the logic behind it, what's the methodology behind it. If you're used to the P3M community, you may well have heard of the Teal Book, which supports GovS002. The Green Book is more to do with the finances and building viable business cases and that sort of thing. So what TPAS allows you to do is build a more compliant business case that focuses more on outcomes, and then you've gathered your requirements, you've done all the great stuff we talked about at the start of this webinar, and you may have selected 1 or 2 or 3 suppliers where you can go to market on TPAS 2 and say, these are our requirements, can you confirm you meet them, and can you go and get me a price for? Now that can you go and get me a price for can often be, we've done our requirements, we've assessed the situation, we've built our business case around the procurement of, in this particular case, let's say Verto. What TPAS allows you to do is reach out to the vast reseller network of suppliers and say, okay, I've done my business case, I've got it approved. We have decided that Verto is the best tool of choice for our organization. And what happens there is the procurement team will go to market. They'll go out on TPAS either on a mini comp or an ITT or sometimes a direct award, and they will say, go and get 40 resellers. I actually don't know how many resellers are on TPAS 2, but there's a large number. Under this lot, procurement lot, can you go and get me a price for Verto? So you're still compliant, you're still receiving multiple quotes, you're still showing what is the best value for your chosen system that is going to best meet your outcomes, your business requirements to enable success. You can still get best value for money without being led down the G Cloud route, which is a fixed pricing. So you allow competition, open competition, that sort of thing. There are often times where TPAS is not suitable, and this is where we're going in. We're talking large transformational projects. You've spent weeks, months, maybe got a consultant in to do all the pre-requirements, all the prerequisite, gathering business requirements from various different areas. And actually, it's rather a large beast, and we need to make sure that we are absolutely justifying that we have chosen the right tool. We've assessed the market. We've invited the open market, the PPM tool provider community to come and show us how they're going to meet our requirements. Quite often, these are much longer processes because regardless of all the pre-gathering of requirements that's done before an organization goes to market, there might be a pre-market engagement where you say, here's what we're thinking of doing. Is that possible? Tell us something we don't know. Once you've done that, you then go a step further and go, okay, we've sort of defined our requirements a little bit more. We kind of know where we're going with this. And you get a request for information or an RFI, which again is the next level up from a PME, from a pre-market engagement, where it's we're thinking of doing this. Does this support what your platform can do? And how else can you deliver value? How else can you help us achieve this outcome? And again, the market responds, and we put bits and pieces in there about how we can support it, what they should be looking for. That's now allowing the buyer and the supplier to start shaping the final ITT based on what is common in the marketplace. The buyer will look at that and go, okay, the majority of these platforms can do X, they can do Y. Oh, this is really cool, but only one or two suppliers do that. Well, we'll put that in as a on the Moscow rating, maybe not a must, but maybe a should or a could. And it then starts you to drive those requirements. And you go to ITT, or longhand invitation to tender. And that's when Craig and I have sleepless nights, long days. We're pulling on our colleagues on the client experience side of the team, in product, etc., to make sure that we're building the most competitive response that's really gonna sell the platform and make sure that we can ultimately meet every requirement that is must, could, or should within the ITT. And where we can't, we talk about how what we would do instead, or that sort of thing. That's then evaluated formally. An evaluation panel can be 4, 8, 12, multiple people across the organization, across the different business areas, across governance, procurement, compliance, finance, as I say, the service areas. And then it's scored, and the successful bidder is awarded the contract. So very long hand there. I spoke an awful lot there, but ultimately we've gone left to right. Direct is the fastest. Frameworks is quick, it's simple, and it keeps you compliant. Open tender is the ultimate, EPPM transformation project. And again, I'm just going to link this back to the change management piece. There's often times when open tenders come out and we're like, hold on a second, this could have been a framework, a TPAS or a G Cloud procurement. Quite often pilots are run, or land and expand is the terminology we sometimes use, where it's you want an enterprise platform, but actually we're just going to test it on this directorate, or we're just going to test it with this portfolio. In that particular case, we still see people come out to ITT when they could have used TPAS or G Cloud, gone everything in potentially 6 months sooner, if not longer, and then they can assess the situation, run the pilot, understand that, and then the frameworks, particularly TPAS, allow you to expand from there as well. So I was actually, believe it or not, I can't name them, but talking to somebody at 9 o'clock this morning, where they're like, I just need 80% of my requirements that will suit 80% of the organization, because you're never going to fill 100% of requirements across vast organizations. But what you can do is get the 80% correct, and then work on the business change, the change management, and understanding the nuances of the remaining 20% that will organically join the platform when they hear all of the great things that the PPM platform is providing. Oh, I can have a report in the click of a button. I have got a dashboard that can show me all my finance data across my portfolio. Oh, I'm a project manager and I just need to help on my work case, on my workload, and I need to organize things as a project manager. Once all that noise starts happening, it's not noise, it's positivity across the organization. All of a sudden, those 20% that we must do it this way, we could do it that way. And that business change then aligns the organization. You drive the consistency back to what we were talking about earlier. The maturity aligns, everything aligns. And again, that's because of the framework process that's been put in place, or the procurement process that's been put in place, which creates an enabler from the ultimate tool that's helping you deliver your outcomes. I said I'd keep it to 2 minutes, Craig. I don't know how long that was. I do apologise.
No, it's really, really useful. I think one thing for me to add as we move on to the slide is that, funny enough, we've said this a couple of times, you do not have to do this alone. There's a lot of options that you have. You speak to us, we're happy to support you with this in more detail. But on top of that, you've got your own procurement departments that know this inside and out. They'll know what your options are. They'll know where a framework is suitable. They'll know if direct is more appropriate. They'll be able to assist you in compelling events and things like that. And they'll be able to assist you throughout this entire journey relevant to the options that you have at your disposal. You may not realize frameworks. You might have partner agreements in place with system resellers, if you will, already, that allow you to take a simpler compliant route. You might be thinking I need to go to full tender, but you may realize after speaking to procurement the options that you have. So just bear that in mind, that there's people around you, it's their day jobs to help you and to understand all of this stuff, and they can absolutely help. And we're often in the room with procurement and having conversations about options and assisting on that piece as well. So that was the only thing I'd just like to add on that.
Yeah, you absolutely have covered a key point that I didn't, Craig, which is the earlier you involve procurement, the less painful it will be.
Exactly that. Pete.
Yeah, so in terms of the key focuses you need to be aware of, there's a number of moments in time coming up, and we've already spoken about 2, if not all 3 of these. So again, we're going to talk about the program and project data standards. These were released by, or published, should I say, by Government Project Delivery in December 2025. Their aim, as it says on the screen, is to create a consistent approach to program and project delivery and allow that standardized reporting across government. Now, 2030 is when government agencies and organizations need to be aligned to the program and project data standards. That's 4 years away. That's ages. What we need to understand is actually there's a compelling event at the end of this year whereby organizations need to deliver a plan for a compliant route. How are they going to do to be compliant against the program and project data standards? What is their plan to achieve that? And again, there's multiple facets involved in that. It's the siloed portfolios, the siloed programs and projects sometimes. How is project A managing their project compared to project G? What are the differences between that? Where's the standardization? How do you do that standardization? Is it a complete, we're going to pick this portfolio and we're going to do it their way across the board? Are we going to look at the top from a center of excellence or an enterprise portfolio management office, and we're going to cascade that down? That is a massive piece of work, and it flicks back to exactly what we overarching this webinar with the change management. We're talking, it doesn't matter whether you're an organization of 500 or you're an organization of 50,000 or 100,000, change management has to apply. And there's various ways that organizations can do that. One of the simplest and most compliant is a tool that aligns to the program and project data standards. Think about that when you're looking to do that piece of work. There are tools out there. I'm sure Craig and Laura and the rest of my team can definitely name at least one that is compliant to the program and project data standards. And that also brings us on to the retirement of Microsoft Project Online. So we are circa 8 weeks away from the 30th of September. Okay, Project Online data, it retires, it ends, it's deleted, it's gone. Again, that isn't just a business change in terms of the change management. That is a fundamental shift in the infrastructure. And what many people may think is, oh, it's okay, we've got a Microsoft ecosystem, we'll flick over to Planner, or oh, let's go back to spreadsheets, let's manage it that way. It worked before, it can work again. How are you going to manage version control? How are you going to manage compliance and consistency across a broad plethora of directorates and departments without that compliance route, without conforming to the program and project data standards? Project Online is everyone's defaulting to. Microsoft is the fallback, but Microsoft is loads of disparate systems that people use in their own unique way. How do you govern that? How do you piece that all together to make sure that every single department is doing it in the way that is going to deliver you your enterprise reporting, your financial reporting? If you're a central government organization that has to report quarterly into Treasury or into the Cabinet Office, if you're a major projects portfolio, how are you going to align that and control that and apply the governance and the stage gating that is necessary to keep this on track? Again, there are PPM platforms out there that can give you that out of the box, and they can match. To Craig's point earlier, you're not trying to square peg a round hole. You are matching your processes, and the tool is matching your processes moving forwards. If anything, the retirement of Project Online could be the catalyst to actually accelerate your project delivery maturity, because it's always been a fallback of, it comes with our enterprise Microsoft licenses, we'll use Project. Actually, there are much better tools out there on managing plans and bringing together the whole PPM experience. Okay. And as we've already spoke about, G-Cloud 14. Now, interestingly, Government Commercial Agency have announced that G-Cloud 15 is coming out on the 6th of August. Okay, so what are we away from that? 2 weeks, I think, roughly, with my rough maths. G-Cloud 14 is still running. It expires late October. So there is nearly a 3-month overlap of G-Cloud 15 and G-Cloud 14. What that will allow organizations across the public sector to do is, we've gathered our requirements. We don't know what to do. We don't know where we're going to go. G-Cloud 15 pricing was submitted winter 25, early 26. G-Cloud 14 pricing, Craig, correct me if I'm wrong, back in 2023. I think when the pricing was put together. Again, technology has changed. The world has changed. Everything has accelerated, and that potentially comes with a cost. So for the first time, as far as I can remember G-Cloud being in existence, you've got a 3-month window to actually go, if we do it in January, or if we do it next financial year, here's the impact on the business. If we do it before October, okay, that's the impact on the business. Which one is, are we in a position where we can actually make this decision? And to my point from the previous slide, G-Cloud 14 is a very fast procurement route. Compared to invitation to tender, open threshold tender. So utilize the time we've got to actually make sure that we're doing what we can with public money and making the best value for money choices with it as well.
Yeah, it's funny, Pete, before we move on, that you've mentioned a couple of almost compelling events there, right? So we're seeing a lot of organizations come to us saying, Project Online's retiring, we need to get into a new system. If we're going to change, let's do it properly. Let's look beyond our noses. Let's look beyond the scheduling. How can it help us from a governance perspective? Is that going to actually make us compliant with these standards like 4 years ahead of time? So we're the professionals in it before it's even mandated. And can we do it in a more commercially competitive manner based on public taxpayer money if we do it at a certain time, right? So it creates that compelling reason to say, right, we're going to have to change at some point. Let's do it now. Let's do it properly, and let's make it more commercially competitive for our organization, and ensure get more bang for our buck. So again, the other thing to mention here, especially on the program and project data standard, a lot of people look at that and go, that's central government, but you'll see here it says standardized reporting across government. There will be a natural trickle down to local govs, how they report up to central gov as well. So this expands a lot of the public sector. This isn't just for central gov. You will see the knock-on effect for years to come in terms of complying with standards like these. And a lot of the time, local authorities will follow best practice from central government just naturally anyway. So we're speaking to many local authorities who are adopting this approach and taking a similar stance now as if it's a requirement directly for them.
Absolutely, and a case in point on that is if we flip back to the Green Book. We were at an event earlier this year, and I heard for the first time a local authority going, "Oh yeah, we're using the 5 case business model from the Green Book, and we're adopting that moving forward." And it was a passing comment, so I didn't know if that was because they wanted to or because they had to. But it is great hearing central government terminology cascading down to local authority, because quite often, believe it or not, central government are looking at local authorities and looking at other public sector organisations that are perhaps smaller in size and understanding what they're doing, because the smaller organisation is actually easier to go through that change management and onboard new tooling or new processes, which supports then the understanding and the direction of central government. So it's that full closed loop develop, how organisations are evolving.
100%, 100%. As we race to the finish line here, the final point to talk about is return on investment. And that should be an important consideration for any organization when they're looking to invest time and money in adopting something new. This extends oftentimes beyond just monetary value, right? A lot of the time, there are different people put different levels of importance on different returns on investment. So you could be thinking, how much money are we saving? Every pound we spend, does that give us 50p back, whatever that might be? But on top of that, it could be team efficiency. It could be eliminating of manual processes. It could be consolidation of a tech stack in order to make that technology ecosystem more sustainable for the future, as we mentioned before. Don't worry, I'm not going to take you through a how-to on an ROI calculator today. We'd be happy to follow up separately on this. But what we have adopted in recent months is a tool that can be used to support the calculation of the ROI. I mean, let's look at business case development, right? Valuation. Pete's alluded to the Green Book there, which is all about justification and valuation of initiatives and building good business cases. A big part of that is, what are we getting back? Right? How is this going to change, and what benefits is this going to bring? So what we actually have on our website is an ROI calculator that can take you through this journey. Now, people use it to different levels. Some individuals use it to get the exact pound to the penny ROI that it's going to be back. Other people use it as an inspiration piece. Some people don't look at the monetary value and look at the team efficiencies it's going to give them. It really does depend on the lens that you and your organization are looking at it from. So what you can see here is our website, and all you simply do is go to resources, go to ROI calculator, and it will begin that journey of calculating the ROI for you. And you can click Let's Get Started. And there's a few steps in the process, some of which may be more important to you than others. But the first step is always about the software and the tools that you've got in place, and where does that opportunity to consolidate lie? You plug in the numbers. It's really easy to use. At the end of that will be an ROI report that's prepared on your behalf. So in typical Blue Peter fashion, Laura's prepared one in advance for us. And it can really start to map out that return on investment, help you with that business case, that justification, give you a high level summary of the breakdown. But as we move through, you'll see that there's mentions of the costs, the savings, what tech stack is in play, the current workload. What does your project ecosystem look like? How much are you spending on that? And therefore, what would happen if you was more efficient, if you delivered better, if you was more aligned to your strategic goals? And then one of my favorite elements is the team efficiency and the product gains, and what it gives your team back. And is that just an interest in time, so days saved, or is there a commercial consideration that you'd like to have? And we go through these with many of our clients. We focus on the areas of importance. It's on our website. You've seen, just go to vertocloud.co.uk, resources, ROI calculator. You can do it yourself, or you can jump on a call with someone like myself, Pete, or another one of our colleagues, and we can take you through this as part of the journey as well. But hopefully that is a tool in your tool belt that you can use to draw some inspiration from. And with that being said, Laura's probably about to jump off mute and bring herself back on the screen. We've brought ourselves to the natural end, Laura.
Yes, we have. Thank you, guys. That does bring us to the end of our time today. And just with 5 minutes to spare. So well done, guys. It was very, very well planned. But thank you all so much for joining today. But thank you, of course, to Craig and Pete for presenting. Such professionalism from you two guys. It's incredible. Your breadth of knowledge knows no bounds. So thank you so much for talking us through all of this today. Do keep an eye out on our website and our LinkedIn company page for details of our next webinar in the series. We're finalising the details now, but the topic is going to be a deeper dive into those compelling events that Pete and Craig were talking about earlier. So really relevant, especially for central government organisations, but as you've heard today, it can also benefit many other sectors, public sector, but maybe even private sector as well. So definitely one to watch out for there. As mentioned, details on those on our website or LinkedIn page. So do follow us. But for now, thank you all very much. Thank you again, guys, and goodbye.
Thanks all. Bye.
Thank you.